where you scream to watch that, watch this, and I'll dive down through this hairy flesh.
There was never a rivalry like theirs. For over half a century, they hated each other, and we loved them for it. They only ever made one film together. Whatever happened to Baby Jane?
What do you think of Feud, Miriam?
Yes, I got really caught up in this. I think particularly the excitement of this kind of genre, American Horror Story director, Ryan Murphy.
Yeah.
So I think it was just that excitement of the whole thing that I really enjoyed.
Right. So I was very excited when they announced this. I love stories of old Hollywood. I just love reading about films in their production. I just can't get enough of stories from on set, tales of actors on set and directors and the working relationships. And ostensibly, therefore, I should love this because the focus of the action is what's going on the set of Whatever Happened to Baby Jane with these two actors and the director, played by Alfred Molina. But I can't stand the execution of this show.
Really?
Oh, my God.
What
The
is it about it?
dialogue and the characterizations are gut-wrenchingly awful.
Really?
Yeah,
Is that
I
how
think
you
so.
feel? See, I feel like it's so stylized, right? And so I could totally see how people would view it in that way. But for me, it feels like an old Hollywood movie. It's almost as though those really extreme versions of the characters and the really over-the-top shots, and I feel like that brings old Hollywood to TV for me.
Ryan Murphy has been getting more camp and more camp as his career's gone on, with The People versus OJ an exception. Even though that was a little bit camp, all of their wigs and their outfits were a little bright, little bustly. But this, I feel like he has gone out of his way to go super camp to the point where I think it doesn't work, because I think it's not giving the audience the benefit of any intelligence whatsoever. So when you've got lines like the housekeeper saying, about the people who are trimming the hedges of Joan Crawford, I told them they should consider it an honor to be servicing Joan Crawford's bush. I mean,
Did they say it like that?
Yeah. And it's not even... It's just like, oh, roll your eyes. You are striving so hard to make the groups of 10 gay men who are going to gather to watch this show laugh. And I'm hoping that those groups of 10 gay men will actually go, we were hoping for something better, wittier.
Yeah.
That's not witty. That is you're desperately trying to get us to laugh. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, it's in your face. See, somehow that line went completely over my head. I just thought it was this kind of absurd, showy, monetary thing, and I don't know how I missed the dirty joke, because I never miss dirty jokes.
Right.
So maybe it was just so camp and so obvious that it didn't even click to me. But in some ways, I really loved that. There were some things that I did feel were a little on the nose in that way, but for me, it just felt like old Hollywood in a way. Kind of that idea of this over melodrama thing, especially with the Joan Crawford character. I feel like her character was in this world of everything being perfect and everything being a little bit over the top. So for me, the language kind of fit with that. But yeah, from that, I understand exactly what you're saying. Yeah, for me, it didn't feel like a comedy at all. It's got those comedic elements, but for me, it wasn't funny like that. For me, it was just being caught up in this world. So yeah, I don't think that those bits were hitting the mark for me at all, because I was more looking at seeing the idea of looking at backstage. I mean, for me, it's really introduced me to more of these old films. I couldn't help but, if I'm watching them shooting the scene and then I get to see clips of them, the remade scene, I wanted to just go back and watch it. So I think it's really helping a whole new generation enjoy those older Hollywood films that they wouldn't have access to usually.
Well, that is interesting, because there's no doubt it's a great story. It's a fascinating story. They were two larger-than-life people. In fact, everyone in the entire story is larger than life. The housekeeper is larger than life.
Yes.
So I guess to tell that story as simply a story is inherently interesting, and they've certainly got the budget, the actors, to do it. And so, yeah, I guess that is cool. Do you find it suspenseful or dramatic in any way, or is it more just like, oh, interesting?
For me, it's more of a light-hearted thing that I can watch and recognise the beauty of it. I think that the way the sets are designed and everything is just so beautiful, and the camera movement's so beautiful. But I wouldn't say it's something that I'm like, what's going to happen next? There's no
Right.
part of me that's desperate to find out what's going to happen or that's laughing out loud. It's more just about being caught up in the mood of, I think the mood is what draws me into this.
Right.
More than anything.
It's an art director's wet dream. It's
Yes.
totally, property porn, art direction porn, period piece porn, the frocks, the houses,
Yeah.
all of that stuff, the cars, the movie sets, the equipment. Absolutely. Yeah, the production design is lovely. I think it's a bit over the top, but it's impeccable. Yeah.
It suits his style, really. How do you feel about in the future? So you've got the 70s, you've got the different movie stars of the time talking about the feud and what was happening between Bette Davis and Joan Crawford at the time. How do you feel about that? Did you feel it was a bit of exposition?
There's so much exposition in this thing in general. Like, I don't have a problem with that. A lot of the exposition is handled, I think, a little clumsily. Like, poor Stanley Tucci, who I consider the greatest actor working today.
He's pretty great.
His character of Jack Warner gets so much exposition in the first episode when he has to tell in this sort of 5-minute rant about how Bette Davis brought down the studio system by challenging her contract. And it's like, so the only way he's sought to make it interesting was to make it furious. And it's just like, good on you for giving it a go. But as an actor of your caliber, Stanley, I would have said, like, I'm sorry, I'm not being Captain Exposition here. This is not a real speech. This is an exposition speech.
There are definitely moments like that for me where it's emotional exposition that I found hard to stomach. I mean, there's with Susan Sarandon's character, with the scene with her and her daughter.
Yeah.
I found that really hard, like really long reaction shots on her just taking an absolute beating from her daughter. I found that a little on the nose, a little bit hard to watch.
Yeah.
Because especially considering her characterization in this is so interesting, I think. And just, I feel so related to her character. Whereas obviously the Joan Crawford character is set up to be much more distant from you and to create this feud.
For me, by far the most interesting character and the only character who's got any dimension is the director, played by Alfred Molina.
Yeah.
He's the only one who's got anything to struggle with.
Yeah.
The two women, bless their hearts, and we'll get to their performances in a minute, but they're just total caricatures.
Yeah, they're not given much to work on in terms of having a truth behind them.
No.
Whereas you can really see his struggle, trying to manage these women, trying to manage his relationship with Warner, trying to manage the relationship with his wife, which is falling apart. But then, they are kind of given these melodramatic scenes and then, leeching off him. It makes you sort of pity them and sort of hate them in some ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I've got into hate for both of them now because I just don't think they're getting the rich characters. Like, even the Jack Warner character seems to be getting, a better story arc, a richer sort of dilemma. Now, the two actors were very different in real life. Bette Davis, famously the much better technical actor, and Joan Crawford, the glamour puss. Joan Crawford, the most beautiful actress in the world, Bette Davis was never called that, but she was always called the best actress working in movies. So, you've got the technically established one and the gorgeous one, and that is in there. And so then you've got this beautiful stunt casting of Jessica Lange, who's been with Ryan Murphy since the beginning from, American Horror Story and all of these. And then you've got Susan Sarandon brought in, one would partly assume because her eyes and Bette Davis' eyes were so similar. They both got these big bug eyes. They look so similar. But they've been allowed to bring different characterizations to the thing, and I'm not sure that's working for me. Now, on the one hand, as I say, the two actresses were themselves different, but Susan Sarandon is doing much subtler work here. I think Jessica Lange is playing out here, and Susan Sarandon is kind of playing it for real, and that's not working with me.
I agree with you, and it's funny because I was reading someone had written how Jessica Lange was just doing the most amazing, incredible performance, and I thought maybe it's for me, it's because the character is so hard to relate to that I'm not getting in on that. But I agree with you. I feel like Susan Sarandon's character, I feel so much more invested in her and so much more related to her. But I wondered if, the whole playing up the old Hollywood glamour puss thing is what's making me less able to connect. I'm not sure.
I found that, like in the first episode, I was I was actually thinking Jessica Lange was being really good. And by halfway through the second episode, I thought she was being terrible.
Right.
Like, I just couldn't stand watching her anymore. It was all so masked, all so projected, all so mannered.
Yeah. But then how much of that do you think actually goes back to being related to Joan Crawford? I mean, there's that mask of Joan Crawford as well. So maybe she's playing that up too much. Maybe that's what it is. But I find it really hard to get in on that.
I also find Judy Davis's performance insufferable.
Really?
As Hedda Hopper, I can't stand her performance. She's doing all her Judy Davis mannerisms and ticks and shaking and this and all that, and she's just doing so much of it, and I can't stand it.
Yeah. I mean, the character is really only given one side. The character is really only playing a caricature, like what you were saying with the others. So I think she's really hard to relate to. But I don't know, her hats. Maybe I'm distracted by the hats. I just think those hats are so amazing, I just don't even notice. And I just could never fault Judy Davis. I don't know how to do that.
Oh, really? See, I can. I think she found a groove on Husbands and Lies. Sorry, Secrets and Lies. Husbands and Wives, pardon me. And she's stuck to it ever since. And she's just made it bigger and bigger. And now she's acting so big, it's just I fear my television's going to fall off the wall.
I wonder if that's direction, though. I mean, they're all doing it. Everything in the show is too big. And that's kind of something that I like about it. The whole thing is just overblown. Whereas in American Horror Story, I could barely watch it. I was like, what is this? I don't know. I really wasn't feeling it.
I hated American Horror Story.
I hated it too, and no one else hates it. So I was feeling really overwhelmed by my hatred for it. But this, I don't know, I was still drawn to it. Despite all the flaws that I agree with you exist in it, I still really like it.
Yeah, I don't know whether they're entering the Ryan Murphy universe so they know to act that way, or whether he's done this. He's let them do all these takes, and then he's like, okay, now guys, just give me one that's absolutely ludicrously large, just over the top, go all out, scream, chew the scenery, just give me that one. And then he's deliberately used all of those takes.
Which is hilarious.
I don't know how they're going to spin this out for 10 hours.
Well, I've heard people say that it just is going to go for too long, but it's interesting to know what he's going to do next, though. It's meant to be Feud, the series, is then meant to become different historical feuds.
He's doing Charles and Diana next.
Is that it? I didn't know that.
I guess he's decided that after they got divorced, they were in an ongoing feud. So it's going to be Charles and Diana next.
It'd be interesting to see that within this kind of world.
The way he gets actors to play the roles.
It doesn't seem to suit the world to me. So I'm curious to see how that would work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for Feud, I'm saying don't watch this. But Miriam...
I'm saying watch it for the fun of it. I think it's interesting and exciting. I definitely would watch it.
Care to comment on the fact that Miss Crawford says you look old enough to be her mother?
You gotta keep them at each other's throats. You have to.
Lose the shoulder pads.
I beg your pardon.
And cut back on the lipstick. You're playing a recluse who hasn't seen the sun for 20 years, for Christ's sake.
Watch that, watch this, and I'll die down.